So many moms feel stuck and isolated, like they've got to keep it all together and can't say how hard it really is. On Let's Get Real, we talk about the real stuff, motherhood, mental health, and everything in between, so you don't feel like you have to carry it alone anymore. Because in order to heal, we have to get real. If you're feeling overwhelmed, grab the Overwhelmed Mom's Guide. It's totally free and made to help you feel like yourself again. The link is in the show notes. Let's jump in. Sleep deprivation can quietly unravel even the most capable, prepared parents. When sleep struggles linger beyond the newborn phase, many families find themselves overwhelmed, doubting their instincts, and wondering if they're doing something wrong. Yet sleep isn't just about rest. It shapes a child's emotional regulation, learning, and a parent's mental health. Today's conversation brings hope, clarity, and practical tools to a topic that so many families struggle with in silence. Today, we're joined by Allison Egidi, a pediatric sleep consultant and the founder of Sleep and Wellness Coach. Allison's journey into sleep work began after nearly 2 years of sleep deprivation with her first daughter, an experience that she describes as one of the most humbling and challenging seasons of her life. After discovering a sleep coach and seeing dramatic changes in just 11 days, Allison approached sleep very differently with her second daughter, who slept through the night by 8 weeks. Inspired by these experiences, she earned her pediatric sleep consultant certification from the Family Sleep Institute and founded Sleep and Wellness Coach in 2016. Allison, thank you so much for being here today. I am very excited to get to explore this topic of sleeping, sleep training, what this looks like in parenting, especially with young kids. So thank you.
Awesome. I'm excited to be here.
Amazing. Well, as we get started, can you take us back to the breaking point that I know you've talked about with your oldest, your first daughter, and share what that season taught you about sleep, motherhood, and asking for support?
Absolutely. I like to think of myself as an overachiever. I'm fairly type A, and generally my life along the way up until motherhood had proven that if I set my mind to something and I prepared and I worked hard at that goal, that it would come together. And I absolutely went into parenting with that. And there was definitely some judging I did of people parenting before I had my own kids, where I thought, like, God, couldn't they just read the book and like pull it together? I definitely will admit to some of that judgment I had. And so when I was expecting my first, I asked around to the people who looked like they had it together that I knew. And I'm like, what book did you read on sleep? What book did you read on feeding? Give me the top things. I took it from those people. I was prepared and I thought, I'm going to crush this just like I've crushed everything. And I was quickly humbled and in virtually every area. But what for me ended up being very impactful was the lack of sleep. And I followed the book. It did not work well. It did briefly work well, and then it didn't work well. And then I read a different book, and then I tried sleep training on my own, and I was calling my best friend, and I was doing all the things and taking in all the advice, and my child was not by the book. And I was working full time. I was traveling a ton for work, and I was actually struggling with postpartum anxiety that was undiagnosed as well. And I was definitely just starting to feel like I'm not doing any of this well. They're telling me I'm performing well at work, but I don't feel like I'm performing well at work. When I'm at work, I'm thinking about all these other problems I have at home. When I'm at home, I'm thinking about the stuff I didn't get done at work. And so I didn't feel like I was present or my best either at home or at work. And the big turning point was when it was Christmas. My daughter was about to turn 2. At that point, I had a surprise second child. I had an almost 6-month-old and an almost 2-year-old. My postpartum anxiety, which I'd basically been in a state of some form of that for about 2 years, was at its peak. And my father, who is not touchy-feely, he's the guy who had me playing high school boys football. He's a tough guy. He was like, we are very concerned about you. Like, we are looking at you. You do not seem like yourself. We don't know what's wrong, but we're very concerned about you. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, because to have him say, we can tell you're unwell, I could like almost choke up now just thinking about it. I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. I am not well. And so it was a really big turning point where he said, he just tried to empower me. He said, you are a smart person. You are capable. I don't know what help you need, but it's time to tap into that. And you need to figure out what your next step forward is. And what I decided was it was going to be figuring out sleep. And I had, at the time, back when Facebook was more of a thing, I had a sorority sister who was posting on a sleep coach's Facebook page. And I thought, I don't know what a sleep coach is, but I will literally give this woman all my money. I don't care. Just fix the problem. And luckily, she was very good at her job. And within 11 days, we had fixed it.
Oh my gosh, less than 2 weeks. That's crazy. Was it for both kids?
I do things differently with my second because I am a nerd and I was working at the university at the time. And I did read a bunch of research on sleep. So I did handle sleep differently with my second. And she's more naturally inclined to sleep, which we can talk about as well.
Helps,
but she was sleeping through the night at 8 weeks. But it was my 2-year-old who was up tons during the night, starting her day at 4:30. It was a train wreck. So my second was sleeping well. She was not the problem, but I was just in a constant sleep deprived state for 2 years and not telling anyone. When I told work, when we hired that sleep coach, and I said, I'm going to have to leave work early for a little bit because we got to fix some things. And I confided, and I had a lovely, lovely manager at the time who was a woman. She didn't have kids, but she was very empathetic. And she said, I had no idea that you were struggling. And there was part of me that probably took pride in that she had no idea, like, oh, I was really pulling this thing off. But it was telling her I was struggling and then taking some time of leaving early so I could have my ducks in a row to do this bedtime thing. It changed everything. Changed everything.
Wow. From talking to friends and being part of different mom groups, this is all too common. However, it usually takes a while for someone to speak up and share. And we were kind of talking about this earlier, but there's often so much shame that comes with parenting. There's so many unrealistic expectations. We should have all the answers and be able to figure this out. It's my kid. How could somebody know how to get them to sleep better than me? I should, as their parent, be able to figure it out. But that's not the reality. The reality is with parenting, it comes with a ton of struggle. There is a lot of struggle throughout all different ages and developmental stages. And we really need help. We need guidance from people. And so as soon as we can finally admit and be and like you said, it was very humbling to get to that place. But in that humility is what then allows us to get the guidance we need and get the help that we need, which creates the freedom to be able to move forward where we feel like we can finally kind of take our life back. We can feel like we come back to life ourselves. There I am. Okay, I knew she was in there somewhere, but really sleep deprivation does so much. It's very damaging to just physiologically, biologically, how our brains work, what we need to be able to function day to day, let alone all of these responsibilities from caring for our kids, working, whether it's full-time, part-time, or if you are staying at home, there's so much weight and responsibility that comes with that, with running a household, with managing your relationships, your partner, all of this. So
I think stay at home, there's even more pressure.
Yes.
Then it's like, well, this is my job. I should be able to figure it out. At least for me, when I went back to work, actually, this is going to sound so bad, but it was a little bit of an escape where I was like, at least I know how to do this.
Yes.
This is something I know how to do. How do those moms who stay home do it? That was my thought process, because then it's like, well, this is literally my job. I am supposed to do it. Parenting is so interesting. I think particularly for moms, I like to say that becoming a mom is a little bit like becoming the CEO of a business in an industry where you've never worked a day.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You're supposed to manage all the people. You're supposed to know how to do all the things in all the departments, sleep, feeding, all the
100%.
Absolute insanity. And I did it to myself. I was not asking for help. I was asking the pediatrician. But beyond that, I was also under the assumption the pediatricians know all things. And I love pediatricians, but that is a very unrealistic expectation that we have of them. And once I made that leap to hire the sleep coach as the first thing I said, okay, there's got to be an expert. I did it. I am quick to find an expert now, because I was like, that was a game changer. So my second was an extremely picky eater. There's got to be some expert in this area. I was like, ding, I'll take that. And so it's just, we're so hard on ourselves and assuming that we should know how to do this thing.
Exactly. I love the analogy that you gave of this being like you are operating as the CEO of an industry you've never had experience. What came to mind, how shocked I was with my oldest because I started babysitting. I was the neighborhood babysitter at 12. So
Really?
yes. And
Yeah.
like in college, I nannied. So
So
I
did
would like,
I.
yes. And I would do like extended, like well, the parents would go on a week long vacation. I'd watch 4 kids at a time and I'd do all the cooking, the crafts, literally played mom.
Yep.
And it gave me enough of this glimpse of like, oh my gosh, this is very hard. Like I wanted to wait a while to have my own kids, but I was shocked when I did. I literally remember being like, I can't believe how many questions I have after all these years of experience with so many children.
Yeah.
It's true. Even in that, the babysitting, the nannying, it's still an industry. I had no true experience of what this was like as a mom where it's 24/7. The role that you play comes with so much. And sleep was a really big part of that. I remember being pregnant with my son, my oldest, in the elevator, and there was this couple and they had a toddler and they're like, "Oh, you're about to pop. You better get sleep while you can." And in my head, I was like, I have to figure out how to get sleep because I knew myself without children, I don't operate well without sleep. So I'm curious, like with your experience and the knowledge you have and what you've seen with other people, how does sleep deprivation affect us? Like the way our brains work, the way we show up at work, the way we parent. Like what have you seen and what do you know about what it does to our mental health, emotional health, our bodies? I'm just curious to hear more on that.
It impacts every area, but the area that I really like to stress the most with moms in particular is the mental health area. Because when you are postpartum, which postpartum is not 1 or 2 months, technically I think they classify it as a year. But if there's multiple things that could make that last and be prolonged as a mental health struggle, sleep is proven to be the number one most effective, least expensive way to start to feel like yourself again. And so when I work with new moms, for example, the science is very clear that 5 hours of uninterrupted sleep is the number that will help you start to feel better. It is not what you and I should be getting. We should be getting 7 to 8. But when you just think about mental health, there is a real turning point there. And so when I'm talking to parents, whether you have a newborn or a 3-year-old struggling, and sometimes I talk to people who haven't slept in 3 years, sometimes part of that puzzle is we got to come up with a plan for you to divide and conquer with your partner. If you have a partner in the house where you're getting a few nights of sleep so that your brain can operate for us to even fix your child's sleep.
Yes.
And so I think the mental health piece is so important because then you can focus on the physical piece. Then you might have energy to go for a walk or do the other things. So sleep impacts your entire body. But I think when you just start with the mental health piece, the rest of it can start to flow a little bit.
That's very helpful because I feel like this is such a cornerstone. It's like a very key area that in the middle of it, you may feel like there's nothing I can do about it. However, there are resources and people like yourself who are available that really want to help you in this way. And it's such a key part to helping us feel better and even countering, like I remember prior to having my son, talking to I have a functionalist doctor, and I was really concerned about postpartum depression because I'm prone to depression prior without any crazy hormones.
Does increase your risk.
Right. So I was very concerned. And he was like, okay, well, here are some of the basics. The basics is like to get sleep. You know, he's like, that's to get sleep. And then also to be able to move your body, just go out for a walk, like get the blood flow going. But to your point, if like, I found myself prior to figuring out like how to sleep train, because I did end up finding a way to sleep train my son. And then I did that with my daughter. I literally now gift this to friends and family.
Love it.
I'm such a big proponent of this. But prior to being able to get sleep, I had no energy to do any of that stuff. I did not have the energy to go outside for a walk. And so it is such a great starting point. And I'm curious because you kind of mentioned this with figuring out how to get the support from your partner. How can partners or some kind of a support system best help during, especially the early months where it's like you're up every couple hours? What could that look like where you could get 5 hours as a stretch of sleep at first?
Sometimes it's literally just having a plan to divide and conquer. So you might decide, okay, I'm going to feed this baby. Let's say it's a baby who can't sleep through the night. They have to have middle of the night wakings. That's where people really get hung up in the early months. They have to feed at some point. Well, okay, if we do an 8 p.m. feeding and then your partner takes the baby and you go get sleep for 5 hours. You're going to go in the guest room. You're going to go in the basement. I don't care where you go, but it's not in the room where the baby is or the partner who's now in charge of said baby for a 5-hour stretch. And so sometimes to allow each partner to get a chunk of sleep, it's that someone goes to bed quite early, gets a chunk of sleep. And this is where, if you're breastfeeding, learning to do a bottle feed. So if your baby can't go 5 hours, have some pumped milk. We're talking about one feeding here. Even if you really want to primarily exclusively breastfeed, if your partner can give one bottle, that can buy you the 5-hour window. And then you can switch out and then your partner can get a window. And so are you going to do it every day? No, let's be realistic. We're not going to have this perfect every day. But if you even do, I work with tons of new moms. If they even do it 2 or 3 times a week, they're like, I can get by. I can get by until we've developed to a point where my baby doesn't need all these feedings. And so that's an example where you just have to be a little bit of a planner, which can be very hard when you're tired. But to say, give me this 5-hour window. You got this. You can offer this bottle. You can hold this baby. You can rock this. I don't care what you do with that baby. I'm going to sleep for 5 hours. Yes. And so choosing that window can be an absolute game changer. And it's the kind of thing where people are probably listening thinking that's common sense. Sure, but I didn't do it. I didn't come up with that idea. It does seem like common sense, but when you're so tired and in the thick of it, you are surviving. That baby wakes up, who's going to deal with the baby? We just want to have a plan, and sometimes you have to take a little space in a quiet area to have that 5 hours of sleep.
That's so helpful to hear because even like, I don't know, I'm thinking, especially after my second, I had postpartum anxiety and that state of anxiety when you're like so fearful of everything, it's hard to even trust yourself if you have the thought, oh, maybe we could split this up and I'll take a chunk of time. When you're in that place, having a new baby, the hormones are all over the place. It's hard to really trust and give yourself the permission or believe this is okay.
That is so true. Yes. Sometimes you need permission. So here we are giving all of you permission.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's so true. And the other part that I hear you saying too is the role that flexibility plays. So it's easy, I think I'm thinking of myself in these experiences of so badly needing sleep and then the anxiety, all this stuff where I'm grasping for control, which creates rigidness. And then I'd have a very hard time when it doesn't go according to plan, or even the anxiety of the baby sleeping now, I have to get to bed now. And then while I'm laying there, I'm like worried, oh God, is she like going to wake up,
And now I only have 4 hours.
Yeah.
I only have 4 hours.
Exactly.
And that's where I'm so glad you brought this up, because the noise of anxiety, the voice is very loud. And so there can be that example where you're saying, okay, well, fine, we gave me a 5-hour window and I was too anxious to sleep. And what that makes me think of is this openness to tell someone you're struggling, because maybe at this moment you can't get 5 hours of sleep. But if I tell my friend who comes over and says, how are you doing? And I say, not great. I tried this trick to get 5 hours of sleep. I'm not getting any sleep. And said friend says, could I come hold the baby for 2 hours while you sleep? You just say yes.
Wow. Yeah.
But sometimes to make that leap, you have to tell them. And I am always so grateful when a new mom tells me I'm not doing well, because I'm like, oh, fantastic. Now we can tap into something. Is it, I'm going to give you a cup of coffee and let you know you're doing great? Is it, I'm going to hold the baby for 2 hours? I'm going to make your dinner. You have to sometimes take that leap. I think it relieves a little of the narrative in our head. When we can just tell someone things aren't going great, it makes it easier to accept help and they'll offer it. A lot of people don't want to overstep.
Yeah.
And if you can just take some baby step, let someone hold the baby that you trust, sleep for 2 hours. It's like a baby step to quieting down everything going on. So then you can build to, oh my gosh, I could sleep for 5 hours.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad that you said this. I wrote it down, the openness to telling someone I'm struggling, being open and willing to share honestly about that. Because you highlighted really important aspects of when we can be honest and tell somebody the truth of how we're actually doing. I'm struggling. I'm not okay. I'm like, I need help. Because then it lets that person know how they could help, or like it helps you then to maybe even find somebody, or just hearing that yourself and acknowledging it, being like, okay, I really do need support here, or you know what I mean? But the more we deny it or pretend, we shove it down and we pretend like I'm fine, I'm good, blah, 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 slap a, smile on my face. Like the more the suffering continues, we actually don't experience relief. And I think I've been so blown away and kind of like mind boggled of like, oh my gosh, a lot of the times when we just say, okay, we're going to like, I'm okay, I'm going to like just power through it. We think it will get better on its own, but a lot of times it doesn't. It actually grows and it gets worse. And then it's not until we usually hit a breaking point where we're like, it's like, how long did you have to go through the suffering when really you could have cut that down in time? And so I'm really glad that you're speaking to this.
And I think asking, so you and I are on the other side of this season that we're kind of talking about. But if you are on the other side, asking people how they are, because a gift, there was a new mom. I was fairly new to our neighborhood when I had my first. And so it was someone I had met a couple times before. We had a dinner with them and we had definitely gotten to know them, but we weren't super close. She came over to see the new baby with my first. And I will never forget this. She said, oh, the baby's so cute. And she had 2 children at the time. She said, how are you? And I was like, oh, good. She's like, how are you? And I kind of looked at her and she said, oh, I remember when I had my first and everyone came over and cared about this baby. And all I could think to myself was, I can't sit down. I just like told this whole story. And she said, I like have so much damage. I literally can't sit and everyone's worried about this baby. And I didn't say anything to her. But what I remember is she walked out that door. I closed my front door and I sobbed. I absolutely sobbed because there was some relief, even though I didn't admit to her that I was not feeling great. There was some relief in being like, holy smokes, okay, I am not the only person who doesn't love what's happening right now, that doesn't love that I'm wearing a diaper and that things are not going well. And so there was this relief. And I've told her, she doesn't even remember it. Now we are good friends. And I've told her like, that was such just a relief moment. I wish I'd been braver and to admit that I wasn't doing well. But it's now I kind of do that. I try to do that for people. Like, well, actually, how are you? And sometimes they're great. I have a friend who's had 3 kids. Her first one, she was great. Her second one, when I asked, she's like, I'm not well. And I'm like, no problem. I will rally the troops. She's had a third. She was great. And so just asking people how they are. Some women are great. And so I also don't want to let
that's true.
People, if you like love new mom time, great. I think that's great. But also just giving people space by letting them know you're open to hearing it, I think is a real gift we can give people. Even if you don't know them well, I think it's a gift.
It is a gift. It's so true. I am thinking of particularly, okay, I have like a couple of different stories going through my head. One, when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was struggling the most. It was awful. It was so bad. I was struggling physically with how much pain I was in, emotionally. Like I mean, and it was scary. There was a day where I like started having these intrusive suicidal thoughts and I was like terrified of this. And I told my husband, I was like, he was planning to leave. I was like, my background's in marriage and family therapy. So I'm like, hey, I'm trained in this. I know what to do. I know I don't want this, but it was just, you feel so out of control when you can't control the hormones going on in your bodies. There's just so much. So I told him, I was like, I need you to not leave. You cannot leave me alone. Literally, I was like, go hide all of the knives, all of the sharp objects. I called my doctor. I did all the things. it lasted just 24 hours, thankfully, and then it subsided. But I remember in that time, I was struggling so much. I was desperate to try and find a space and people I could really share this with. So I had gone to multiple moms groups, whether it was through the churches or different organizations. And when I would share, like I was like, I just had a panic attack. I was literally met with crickets. And these were from like some at my table. I had someone who's a grandmother, people who've like been through this like decades later.
Yeah. Yep.
And I did not have that space. And I remember because the thing for me, I felt like, what's wrong with me? I felt so crazy. And then I did find like one person at one of those who we would talk after, and she would share honestly. I was like, this is what I need. I need a space where people could share honestly and be like, you're not alone in this. And this is really hard. For some women, it goes very smooth, which is amazing. For others, it doesn't. And when it doesn't, that's where so much shame comes in. And that's what I was battling and struggling with. And I also love what you had said about like that woman sharing with you. And even though it didn't matter really if you to share back or not, it was just the gift that she gave you and the permission that this is hard.
And
it's
I wasn't
okay.
the only one. There are other people
exactly
who aren't loving this moment.
Exactly. And I remember after having my daughter, it was my birthday, and I got a facial as a gift, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. Like I get to lay on a table and not have to move and like get a facial. So, but the lady, she was like, how has it been? And I was telling her, I'm like, really hard. Like I'm not doing okay. And she told me like the memories she had with her daughter and the struggle of those early years, especially just feeling so overwhelmed. Her husband had traveled a lot, which was the situation with me. And I did not feel alone. I felt like seen. I felt understood. I felt like, again, I'm not crazy. This really is difficult. And her presence and her sharing that was such a gift. So I think
it's the perfect example that you can help someone even if they're not your best friend.
Yes.
You can literally help the mom at the park who you meet, who's got a toddler and a newborn, and you just offer some like, wow, this is tough. I remember when I transitioned to 2, and they might say nothing. They might be having the grandest time ever, or you might really be giving them a gift of not feeling alone. And so I think whether it's your best friend you can help, or you're getting the facial and someone's telling you, it's just amazing how these little micro moments can be so impactful in motherhood. And every season, you kind of started this episode saying, we all go through seasons. And now I have a daughter about to turn 13 and I have an 11-year-old. And every season, I remember people asking like, oh, how's it going in puberty? And like kind of giving me that gift. And I'm like,
yes.
Every season, there's something where you're like, okay, I'm not the only one that's going through this.
That is so true. It's something that can be applied throughout all the different stages, developmental ages, all of that, where it's right now we're talking about the sleep and early motherhood when you are thrown into this and it is chaotic. Like, what is happening? But it can be applied to like teenage years or just each
choosing schools. There's just so many seasons where I think we sometimes think everyone has it figured out. Everyone knows exactly what school their child should go to. And the reality is we don't. We do not have it figured out.
Right, exactly. And to realize the more, like even just getting to the place of admitting and being like, I need help in this, then you realize in other areas, there is help available. What you were saying earlier, I bet there's an expert for this. I bet that there's somebody I could find, which is so true. And one of the things I'm curious about, because you're kind of talking about like with your daughter when she was about 2, how you brought somebody in at that age, because I'm thinking like once we get past those newborn stages, and for somebody who's like been kind of drowning for, I don't know, at least a few years, they have like toddler, elementary school age kids. What does that look like as far as trying to help them with the sleep training with their kids at those ages, where it's like even then there's still hope and help?
Oh, totally. It's making me think of a family I worked with somewhat recently who has a fifth grader in my daughter's class and a toddler. And I helped with both the toddler and the fifth grader. And the type of things that bring me so much joy in this work is when this fifth grader told my daughter, your mom has changed our lives.
Oh my gosh.
And like the fifth grader said, she helped me. And I was like, oh, the fact that she told you that. And I didn't work with her directly. She knows who I am, but I worked with her parents, and her parents must have told her that's where they learned. I think as kids get older, language becomes so important. Even a 2-year-old, where we want to incorporate telling them this is what we're going to do. And the structure is different, a 2-year-old to a 5-year-old or a fifth grader. And we use age appropriate language. But I think language is so incredibly powerful because kids like to understand what is happening, and none of us like surprises. You don't want to suddenly have your routine flipped upside on its head without any explanation. And I'm such a believer that it is never too late to learn great sleep. I personally learned how to be a good sleeper after becoming a sleep coach for kids. I was able to fix my own sleep issues that I'd had my entire life. And so whether your child is 6 months old and you're an early action taker, I help that group too, or you have a fifth grader who's never slept well, they can learn to sleep. But some kids need to be taught how to sleep. And the best way I think I can say it is some children have a 25-piece sleep puzzle. My second was this way. I had her sleeping through the night at 8 weeks, as I mentioned. Well, her sleep puzzle wasn't that complicated. I did some things differently. It was very clear where the pieces needed to go. And then my other daughter, the whole reason I ended up with this business, her sleep puzzle was like 1,000 pieces. She is not supernaturally inclined to sleep. I needed to get all the pieces put together well for her to sleep. And so what age we put together that puzzle, it can happen at any time. But sometimes it's really putting together that puzzle. And then as kids get older, helping them understand how their body works. You mentioned you've worked with a functional practitioner, as have I. I am all about, let's be curious about our own bodies. Let's understand how your body works. And my kids are polar opposite. And they are my greatest teacher in every area of parenting. And so it's like, this doesn't work for you. Here's what your body needs. One of my kids can't eat gluten. One can. And this is what your body needs. And there's just power in that. And sleep is one of those areas. So as kids get older, I think it's getting curious about their bodies, what helps them sleep, what makes it hard for them to sleep, educating them. Now, let's be real. Even my 7th grader's not like, Mom, I love that we know all these things and I'd love to do them. It's still our job to hold the structure and routine.
Yeah.
But education is power for kids, I think.
Yeah. And it helps them understand why this matters, why it's important, instead of just do what I say at that age. That's so helpful for them to then grow, hopefully, towards valuing it and being like, oh, I get this helps me at school. It helps me academically. It helps with impulse control. It helps with like so many factors, which is the other part that I'm curious about is what have you seen? Because that little girl, the 5th grader, who's like, she has helped me so much. So I'm curious, what have you seen in that example is how sleep helps the kids, where it could be academically or whatever. So I'm curious about that. How does it help kids in those ways? And then what have you seen as far as how it helps families? What are some of the transformation kind of stories that you've seen, families and the children themselves?
Totally. So the 3 main areas that I think as kids get older that I like to emphasize is the power of sleep for emotional regulation, impulse control, and learning retention. And the research is really powerful on this. And this is true for adults, let's be honest. We're more emotionally regulated. We have better impulse control as far as like not snapping at people. And you're able to remember things.
Yes.
Whether new things or old things. And so this is true for kids. So I work with more and more school-age children now, and a lot of times they will end up in my realm because a pediatrician or a teacher has said, why don't you reach out to her and see if it'll help with classroom behavior? So that impulse control, that ability to remember, I need to raise my hand, I need to not shout out, I need to stay in my seat. Sleep deprivation has very similar symptoms to ADHD.
Interesting.
And so I will often get children that come to me from pediatricians who they are going to do ADHD testing. One of my children has ADHD, so this is not me saying like people don't have ADHD. Some people do, but her symptoms are managed by her sleep and her diet. For her, that's what works for her. But a lot of people will come and the doctor will say, why don't you fix the sleep thing? And then we get more accurate test results. The test results are a little more clear. It makes it a little more clear. Do we want to start medication? What other lifestyles do we want to try? And so that's what I see really with the school age children is the power in that. But I love to hear from a kindergarten parent that's like, the principal was calling me for my child's behavior, and now the principal's not calling. I'm like, fantastic. We're just making it easier for kids to go through school when they're well rested. And so for like my kids, there's also like the proof in seeing it play out. So I know these things. I read the research, I teach it, and obviously, I'm a nerd and I've been prioritizing my kids' sleep. Sometimes they appreciate it, sometimes they don't. But I'm always telling them, like, this is part of the reason you get straight A's and you don't have to study so much is because of this sleep. Well, do I know that's really true? I don't know. But it was 3 years ago. I think it was when my daughter was in third grade. The first year she got grades. And she was plugging along, A pluses. And I am a huge sports fan and we live in a college town. And I was like, gosh, it's been like a decade since I've been able to go to all these basketball games. So I was like, I'm going to the UVA men's games, women's games. I don't care. We're going night games. We've done this for a decade and my kids are great sleepers. They're thriving. Let's go. And they play basketball. So we dove in. After a couple weeks, my straight A third grader, which it's third grade, who cares? All of a sudden was a B student. At first, I did not think much of it because it's third grade. I honestly don't care that much. But after a couple weeks of like consistent B's, I did say to her like, hey, what's going on? Is school feeling harder? And she's like, I don't know. And I said, I'm kind of curious if it's because 2 nights a week, we are probably going to bed an hour and a half past your bedtime. Let me be clear. Her behavior was fine. I was getting no reports of anything. She wasn't crumbling. And I said, we're going to do a little experiment. You're out on the basketball games. I'll take your older sister, but you're not going. And I just want to see, we're changing nothing else. What happens to your grades? Within a week, boop, back up.
Wow.
And she will talk about it now. She's in 5th grade. And I'm like, we're just making your life easier. If you care about being a good student, which she says she does, this is what we can study less, sleep more, and study less. There's a lot of good research on this, actually. Sleep prepares your brain to learn, so it allows them to go into the classroom and actually take in what they're being taught, and then sleep stores it in the memory. So you need sleep before learning and you need sleep after learning. And so if academics is like a big priority for a family, I'm like, gosh, if you prioritize the sleep, you're just making it easier. And if I could turn back time, I would do more sleeping in college and less all-nighters. That did not help me. So this is where I say, like, knowledge is power. We want to teach our kids. Will my kids rebel in college and probably pull all-nighters? I'm sure they will. But I hope that they can come back to this knowledge base when they need it and it will serve them.
Oh my gosh, these are such great stories and examples because it is foundational. That is the word I keep thinking of as you're talking about this. Sleep is foundational and it helps us in so many ways. It helps our kids in so many ways. And I think, again, coming back to understanding the purpose, sleep serves a purpose. There is a purpose. I know our culture is obsessed with productivity and we think we can go without it. No, like sleep actually feeds and fuels and helps our productivity. It just can seem counterintuitive. So I really love the insight that you bring to this conversation and the hope that it really is possible. It is possible for us as parents to get sleep. It's possible for our kids to get sleep no matter their age. Like I love the example of a 5th grader or 7th grader. Like it doesn't matter how old they are. There's so much hope here. We can get a family sleeping again. And that will have a huge positive effect where we can finally move out of feeling like we're just surviving and getting to flourish and thrive and reclaim those parts of our lives that have been dormant for a while. So
totally.
I am so glad we got to have this conversation. And for anybody who wants to connect with you and learn more of the services that you offer, what you provide, could you share where they could find you?
Absolutely. So I have a podcast where I cover all things sleep called How Long Till Bedtime. And then I'm on Instagram. My handle is at Sleep and Wellness Coach, and my website is sleepandwellnesscoach.com.
Oh my gosh, Allison, thank you so much for being here and having this conversation. I'm very excited. I know there are so many moms out there that could definitely benefit from your services and your help and resources. So thank you. Thank you for making the time to be here today.
Well, thank you for having me, and thanks for everything you're doing to empower women to be more open and honest.
Amazing. Well, thank you. And if this conversation encouraged you, please share it with another mom who needs to hear it. And remember that you are not alone. I cannot wait to talk with you next time, friend. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for listening to Let's Get Real. If you've been feeling stretched thin, stuck in survival mode, or like you've lost yourself in motherhood, I made something just for you. It's called the Overwhelmed Mom's Guide, and it's totally free. Inside, I walk you through simple steps to help you reconnect with who you are, find a bit more breathing room in your day, and start to feel like you again. You can grab it now. Just click the link in the show notes. You don't have to keep doing this alone. Let's take the next step together.